Right, so if I've not overwhelmed you with too much information, we're now going to look at the kind of stories that make the news. Now, the beauty of this being an online course is there's a lot of detail, and you can jump in, you can pause, you can see, you can forward if it's not relevant for you. But the whole point is I really want to break down the different types of stories that work for the media, because then you'll have a solid understanding and be able to marry your business with the relevant stories. So I'm going to start with the most heartwarming of all kind of stories that make the news, and it's human interest stories and case studies. So if you've not heard this before, I'll tell you now, but basically human interest is what so many journalists look for. Unless you're sort of a hard-nosed business journalist that just wants to know about flotations, acquisitions, etc., most journalists look at the human interest story. They want to know how it affects me and how it affects you. They want to know about what it means for people. So if you've got a product, so say for example you're I used the example previously of a doggy training company, and you've got a story of a family who really struggled with their dog and it's taking a lot of their time, and they just weren't sure how their puppy was going to be trained. And if you've now trained them and they're incredibly obedient, it saves them time, they've got a better relationship with their pet, and their children have a better relationship with their pet, it's a really heartwarming human interest story. The other side of it is, say for example you've got a homemade organic skincare product aimed at children, and for example you decided to set up that business because your baby, when they were born, they had eczema and they had a lot of allergies, and you decided then to build this product. It's not so much the product, but it's the story and the reasoning behind the product that is going to be of interest to a lot of journalists. So if you can find the human interest story in your business, you're all the better. Now, if you're a business to business organisation, you might think it's a little bit harder, and to a degree it might be that you're not aiming at consumers in the same way. However, you can still get the human interest element in there. Let me give you an example. Have you ever seen on the news when they're talking about the new budgets coming out and the new finance issues and markets? It's quite a dry subject. So what you may notice, or I hope you do next time you turn on the news, is they often say, right, and now we're going to go to Keith to see how the new pension budget is going to affect him. Journalists always try to make it relatable to people. So for example, if there's going to be a new round of investment from the government or funding is being withdrawn, often they'll get themselves to the floor of a factory to talk to the business owners about how it's going to affect their staff. So finding the human interest angle is a really good way to go, which is why it's topmost on the kind of stories that make the news. And I've got an example for you. Well, I've got a couple, and the first one is this one, and it's essentially, if you can read the title, it says, "I just want to be able to live my life like any other young woman." I mean, straight away, who wouldn't feel moved by that? So straight away you know that this young girl doesn't live her life like any other young woman, and she wants to. The background to this story was when I was working in PR healthcare, and one of my clients, they were a hospital, and the surgeon had a treatment for cerebral palsy. And it was a fantastic treatment that actually helped. If you can see her hand, the way it's shaped, it actually helped to not completely treat, but certainly correct some of the postures and the issues that's been caused by cerebral palsy. And as a PR, but with my journalist hat on, I spoke to her and said, what are the kind of things that you struggle with? What's it like? And she said, I just want to wear heels. I just want to do normal things. I just want to be a young girl. I'm at university and I want to live my life, and I want to be able to, go to clubs. I want to be able to do all those things. And that was the story. So this I gave as a case study, which the journalists then, they didn't use word for word, but they took a lot of key points, and they were so interested in the story because it was such a strong human interest angle. They went on to interview and take pictures of the girl who'd been treated. So that's the kind of story that works. So that's an example where I wrote a press release, and I'm going to talk to you in more detail as the course goes on about how to do that. But also it shows how the story really made a huge impact on this young girl's life. So it's not just my surgeon's done this great treatment, which would be the business angle. It's actually the human interest angle. What about the person that was treated? How's their life been changed? if you look behind me, there's just some examples I wanted to share with you. Another human interest angle is another case study, and it's a lady who had her cataracts treated, and that ended up in the Daily Mail. And essentially, it was the cataract surgery, great, but it's her story. She stopped playing tennis because she couldn't see when the ball was coming towards her because her cataracts were getting in the way of her vision. So that's a really good example of how, again, the human interest story, how did something change? How did someone's life improve because of what you've got to offer? That's essentially what the story is. A similar thing, which I'll go into in more detail later on, but this was an example where we didn't have a case study, but I invited a GP to go to a journalist's house and basically raid her cupboard and actually appraise the kitchen cupboard ingredients, which was fantastic. And the human interest angle there is the journalist said her parents both have diabetes and she is interested in the implications of her diet on her health. So making it about people, not about things, not about intangibles and about products. Actually, for certain publications, certainly consumer publications, which is basically the media you read for pleasure as opposed to business publications, human interest really works a treat.